That night in that crowded New York restaurant, my daughter hung her head as tears fell onto the white tablecloth. And I understood that there are silences that kill. My name is Evelyn Hayes. I am 58 years old, a mother, a former wife, and for a long time I believed that maintaining family peace was the most important thing in the world. But that night, something broke inside me. It all started with a reservation, a family dinner to celebrate my grandson's birthday. One of those fancy downtown restaurants with linen tablecloths and lit candles on every table. My daughter Clara had insisted that we all go together. She, her husband, Victor, his parents, and me. Since I became a widow 3 years ago, Clara always makes sure to include me. She is my only child, the light of my eyes, a sweet, educated woman with a brilliant career as an architect, which she put on pause when my grandson was born. I arrived early at the restaurant that night. I was wearing a navy blue dress that my late husband gave me on our last anniversary. In my purse, a handkerchief embroidered with my mother's initials. I always carry it with me. It's my connection to the women who came before me, the women who also learned to keep quiet. Clara arrived shortly after. I saw her walk in arm with Victor, and something about her face unsettled me. She was smiling, yes, but it was that tight smile a mother recognizes from a mile away. She wore a long-sleeved sweater despite the May heat. "Mom," she greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Her lips were trembling. "Honey, are you all right?" "Of course, Mom, just tired." Victor greeted me with that cold cordiality that I had always found strange. A handsome man from a good family, a successful engineer, the kind of son-in-law any mother would approve of. Or so I thought. Victor's parents arrived. Mr. Sterling, a heavy-set man in his late 60s with a gruff voice and abrupt manners. Mrs. Patricia, quiet, always 2 steps behind her husband, her gaze lost somewhere undefined. We sat down and ordered dinner. Everything was proceeding normally until Clara made a mistake. A mistake so small, so insignificant it shouldn't even be called that. She ordered red wine instead of white. "Clara," Victor said with that controlled voice that chills the blood, "you know perfectly well that I ordered fish. Red wine doesn't pair with it." "I'm sorry, honey, I didn't think, you never think." The server froze with the glass in his hand. "It doesn't matter," I intervened. "We can change it, right?" Mr. Sterling let out a dry laugh. "Leave it, Evelyn. Victor is right. Women today don't even know how to order a glass of wine." I swallowed. Clara lowered her gaze. And that was when I saw something that chilled me to the soul. As she reached for the bread, the sleeve of Clara's sweater rode up just a few inches, barely enough. On her wrist were marks, yellowish bruises, trying to heal the prints of fingers. My heart stopped for a second. "Clara," she immediately pulled the sleeve down, covering herself, her eyes pleading, "It's nothing, Mom." But I knew a mother always knows. The dinner continued amidst forced conversation. I barely touched my food. I watched every gesture Victor made toward my daughter. Every time she flinched slightly when he got too close, every cutting word disguised as a joke. And then the moment came. The server brought the wrong dessert to the table. A simple mistake, pecan pie instead of cheesecake. Victor snapped his fingers to call the server. "Is this how you work here?" My wife ordered cheesecake. "Honey, it doesn't matter," Clara whispered. "Can I just eat the pecan pie?" "It doesn't matter," Victor's voice rose. "Are you always going to be such a conformist?" "Victor, please, you always embarrass me." And then it happened. In a swift, brutal movement, Victor reached out and grabbed Clara by the hair. He yanked her head back hard. The entire restaurant fell silent. My daughter did not scream. She only let out a muffled sob as tears began to roll down her cheeks. And in that terrifying silence, Mr. Sterling's voice rang out loud, clear, clapping. "That's how it's done, son. That's how it's done. She needs to know her place." Clara hung her head. Her shoulders were trembling. Mrs. Patricia stared at her plate as if nothing was happening. And I felt something inside me shatter, something that had been cracking for years as I watched my daughter become smaller, quieter, and more absent. My hands trembled on the table. My blood turned to ice. And then I did something. I stood up. "Before I tell you what I did that night, I need you to understand something." I need you to know the Clara I raised. Because what I saw in that restaurant was not my daughter. It was a shadow, a ghost of the brilliant woman she had been. Clara was born on a spring morning 32 years ago. She came into the world crying loudly, her fists clenched as if she already knew that life requires a fight. My husband George held her in his arms and told me, "This girl is going to change the world, Evelyn. I can see it in her eyes." And he was right. Clara was always a curious, intelligent, persistent child, the kind who takes apart toys to understand how they work. The kind who asks 1,000 questions and is not satisfied with vague answers. I remember that when she was 8 years old, she built a birdhouse with pieces of wood she found in the garage. It wasn't perfect, but it had a solid roof and firm walls. "See, Mom," she said proudly, "birds need a safe place too." She grew up loving architecture. She spent hours drawing houses, buildings, bridges. She said she wanted to create spaces where people felt protected, where they could breathe. She studied on scholarships, graduated with honors, got a job at one of the most prestigious firms in the city, earned her own money, had her own apartment, her own life. She was independent, she was happy, she was free, and then she met Victor. At first, everything seemed perfect. He was attentive, thoughtful, polite. He arrived with flowers, took her out to dinner at fancy restaurants, sent her sweet texts during the day. My daughter glowed when she talked about him. "Mom, I think he's the one," she told me one afternoon while we were having coffee in my kitchen. I looked at her bright eyes and smiled. "If you're happy, honey, I'm happy." The wedding was beautiful. A garden full of white roses, a lace dress that Clara had designed herself, soft music, promises of eternal love. George had already passed away by then, but I felt his presence there. I walked my daughter down the aisle and placed her hand in Victor's. "Take care of her," I told him. "With my life," he replied, smiling. The first few months were good, or so it seemed. Clara kept working, although Victor insisted it wasn't necessary. "I earn enough for both of us," he would say. "You can stay home and relax." "But I like my job," she would reply. "Don't you like being with me?" Small phrases, small comments, nothing that seemed alarming at the time, but the seeds of control were already planted. When Clara got pregnant, everything changed. Victor insisted she quit her job. "It's dangerous for the baby," he argued. "Too much stress, too many hours on your feet, you need to rest." Clara hesitated. She loved her career, but she also loved the baby growing inside her. "Maybe just for a while," she told me, seeking my approval. "I can go back after the delivery. Whatever you decide, honey, but don't let anyone decide for you." She smiled, but something in that smile was no longer the same. My grandson was born one early morning in December, a beautiful, healthy baby with his mother's dark eyes. Clara named him Ethan after my father. Victor was ecstatic. He organized a huge party to introduce the baby. He invited all his family, his friends, his work colleagues. Clara looked tired. She had a difficult delivery. She was still recovering, but Victor wanted to celebrate. "Just a couple of hours," he told her. "It's important to me." She agreed. She always agreed. I went to that party. I watched my daughter move among the guests with Ethan in her arms, smiling politely, answering the same questions over and over. "How's the baby? Is he sleeping well? Are you breastfeeding?" Victor didn't hold his son once that afternoon. He was busy toasting with his friends, telling jokes, receiving congratulations, and I saw something in Clara's eyes I had never seen before. Exhaustion. But not the exhaustion of the body, the exhaustion of the soul. The weeks passed, the months. Clara did not go back to work. Victor said that Ethan needed her at home, that a mother shouldn't leave her child with strangers, that she had studied so much, worked so hard that she deserved to rest. Besides, he would add, "I earn enough, you don't need to work." Clara stopped mentioning her work. She stopped drawing. She stopped talking about her dreams. When I visited her, she was always cleaning something, cooking, organizing, taking care of Ethan. The house was spotless, too spotless. "How are you, honey?" I would ask. "Fine, Mom, everything is fine." But I knew it wasn't. A mother always knows. I started noticing small things. How Clara anxiously checked her phone every time it rang. How she tensed up when she heard Victor's car arrive. how she constantly apologized for everything. "I'm sorry, Mom, the house is messy. I'm sorry I didn't make enough food. I'm sorry," Ethan's crying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," as if her very existence was an inconvenience. One day, I arrived without warning. I knocked on the door several times before Clara opened it. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had deep dark circles under her eyes, a milk stain on her blouse. "Mom, I didn't know you were coming, that's why I came." I walked into the house. Ethan was sleeping in his crib. Everything was silent. "Where's Victor?" "At work. He has a lot of meetings this week." "And you? When was the last time you left this house?" Clara was quiet, then she shrugged. "I don't need to go out, Mom. I have everything I need here, everything." She avoided my gaze. I made coffee. We sat in the kitchen. I took her hands. They were cold despite the warmth. "Honey, you can talk to me. You can always talk to me." "I know, Mom. Are you happy?" Silence. A silence so long, so heavy that I felt like I was suffocating. "I'm tired," she finally replied. "But all mothers are tired, right?" It wasn't an answer, it was an evasion, but I didn't push. Sometimes the silence of a daughter is louder than the questions of a mother. The months continued to pass. Ethan grew. He learned to crawl, to walk, to say his first words. Clara dedicated herself to him completely. Too completely, as if he was the only thing she had left. Victor worked more and more hours, or so he said. He came home late, left early. He traveled constantly for business. Clara didn't complain. She never complained. "It's his job, Mom. He has a lot of responsibilities." I watched my daughter fade away, stop laughing, stop dreaming, stop being Clara. And I didn't know what to do, because when a daughter smiles and says she's fine, a mother wants to believe her. She needs to believe her, even if deep down she knows the truth. One afternoon, while I was watching Ethan so Clara could rest, I found something. I was looking for a bib in the kitchen drawer when I saw an envelope hidden among the placemats. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside were photographs. Photographs that Clara had taken of her own arms, her wrists, her neck, bruises, marks, evidence. My world stopped. I felt the floor open beneath my feet. I put the envelope back exactly where I had found it. I finished watching Ethan. I waited for Clara to wake up from her nap. When she came downstairs, I looked her in the eyes. "Honey, I need you to tell me the truth." She turned pale. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "You know what I'm talking about." Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Victor's under a lot of stress. Work, responsibilities, pressure. Sometimes he loses control. But he loves me, Mom. He loves me." "Love doesn't hurt, Clara. All marriages have problems. These aren't problems. This is violence." She hugged herself as if protecting herself from my words. "I can't leave him, Mom. I have a son, a family. What are people going to say? What will his family think? And what about you? What about your life?" "My life is my family." I broke down. I knelt in front of her and took her hands in mine. "Honey, please come home with me, you and Ethan, just for a while, to think clearly." "I can't, Mom. Victor needs me. He's going to change. He promised me." "How many times has he promised you?" Silence. That damn silence. Clara pulled her hands away from mine and stood up. "Thanks for watching, Ethan, Mom, but it's getting late. Victor will be home soon and I need to make dinner." I left that house with a broken heart. I couldn't sleep that night. I hugged my mother's embroidered handkerchief and cried. I cried for my daughter, for her lost bravery, for her buried dreams, for the brilliant woman she had been who now lived in fear. And I swore I would find a way to help her, even if she wasn't ready to ask for help yet. Because a mother never gives up. Never. 6 more months passed. 6 months of forced smiles, brief calls, constant excuses. Clara always had a reason not to visit me, not to go out, not to live. And then the invitation arrived. A family dinner to celebrate Ethan's birthday at a fancy downtown restaurant with the entire family present. I agreed to go, although something in my chest warned me that this night would be different. I didn't know how much, but a mother always senses when the storm is coming. Sometimes we trust those we shouldn't too much. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. The night of the dinner arrived with a light rain, those fine drops that wet silently, like silent tears from the sky. I got ready carefully. The navy blue dress, a discreet pearl necklace, comfortable shoes. I put my mother's embroidered handkerchief in my purse as always. I touched it with my fingers before closing the clasp. "Give me strength, Mom," I whispered. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes before the agreed upon time. I've always been punctual. It's one of those things George valued about me. "Evelyn, one never has to wait for you," he would say, smiling. How much I missed him, how much I needed his presence that night. The restaurant was elegant. White tablecloths, silver cutlery, lit candles on every table, soft background music, the kind of place where people speak in low voices and servers walk without making noise. I sat down at the reserved table, a large round table near the window. From there, I could see the wet street, the cars passing, the people walking under their umbrellas. I ordered a glass of water and waited. Clara arrived shortly after. I saw her walk in arm with Victor and something in my stomach tightened. She was wearing a beige dress with small flowers, discreet, almost childish. It wasn't her style. Clara had always preferred strong colors, modern designs, clothes that spoke of her personality. But this woman walking toward me seemed to want to disappear. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun without a single strand out of place. Her makeup was perfect but excessive, as if she were trying to cover something. And her eyes were dim. "Mom," she greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and fear. "Honey, it's good to see you," I hugged her. I felt her bones too pronounced under the dress. She had lost weight. "Where is Ethan?" I asked. "With a sitter," Victor replied before she could speak. "This is an adult dinner. The child would be restless." I didn't say anything, but it seemed strange. It was Ethan's birthday. Why celebrate without him? Victor pulled out the chair for Clara. She sat down carefully, as if every movement required permission. "You look beautiful, Mom," Clara said, forcing a smile. "You too, honey." A lie. She looked tired, hollow-eyed, fragile. Victor sat down next to her and immediately picked up his phone. He started checking emails, answering messages, completely oblivious to our presence. Clara looked at her hands in her lap. "How have you been, Mom?" she asked softly. "Fine, honey, busy with the garden. The roses are blooming beautifully this year. That's nice. You should come see them, you and Ethan. We could spend the afternoon together." She hesitated. "Yes, Mom, soon. Soon, that word that never comes. And you, how are you?" "Fine. Busy with the house with Ethan, just that." She looked at me for a second, just 1 second. I saw something in her eyes, a silent plea, a choked cry, but then Victor looked up from his phone. "Clara is perfectly fine, Evelyn. She has everything she needs. A beautiful house, a healthy son, a husband who works hard to give her a good life." "I don't doubt that, Victor." He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Victor's parents arrived. Mr. Sterling entered the restaurant as if he owned the place. Loud voice, abrupt manners, a presence that took up more space than necessary. Mrs. Patricia walked behind him, quiet, looking down, a shapeless gray dress and worn shoes. "Family," Mr. Sterling exclaimed, opening his arms. Victor immediately stood up and hugged his father. Clara stood up too, but kept to the side, waiting. "Clara," Mr. Sterling said, looking her up and down, "thinner every day. Isn't my son feeding you?" "I'm fine, Mr. Sterling." Good, women and their diets." Mrs. Patricia greeted me with a nod. We all sat down. The server arrived with the menus. "Good evening. Can I get you something to drink while you decide?" "Whiskey double," Mr. Sterling ordered, "and bring a pitcher of water with ice." "White wine for me," Victor said. "White wine for me too," I added. The server looked at Clara. "And for you, ma'am?" Clara hesitated. She looked at the menu, then she looked at Victor. "White wine too?" she asked, as if asking for permission. He didn't even look at her. "Whatever you want." She took a breath. "Red wine, please." And there it was, that moment so small, so insignificant, so absurdly trivial. Victor looked up from his phone slowly, like a predator who has just spotted movement. "Red wine," Clara blinked. "Yes, why?" "I'm ordering fish. Red wine doesn't pair with fish." "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. Can I change it?" "You never think." The words fell like stones onto the table. The server froze, notebook in hand, unsure what to do. I intervened. It doesn't matter, Clara can order whatever she wants, right? We're not taking a smell exam. I tried to sound light, casual, but my voice came out tight. Mr. Sterling let out a dry laugh. Leave it, Evelyn, Victor is right. Women today don't even know how to order a glass of wine. In my day, wives would first ask what their husband was ordering before requesting anything. Mrs. Patricia lowered her gaze to her lap. Clara shrunk in her chair. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll switch to white wine. Honey, you don't have to. White wine is fine, Mom. The server quickly wrote it down and backed away as if escaping a fire. I stayed quiet. I swallowed. I felt my mother's handkerchief in my purse like an anchor. The conversation continued. Mr. Sterling talked about politics, business, how much he had achieved in his life. Victor nodded, commented, laughed at the appropriate times. Mrs. Patricia ate in silence. Clara pushed the food around on her plate without taking a bite. I watched every detail. How Clara kept her hands on the table visible as if she needed to prove she wasn't doing anything wrong. How she flinched every time Victor spoke loudly. How she constantly checked her phone anxiously. And then I saw it as she reached out for the bread basket. The long sleeve of her dress went up just a few inches, barely enough. On her wrist were marks, bruises in different stages of healing, some yellowish, others greenish, some still purple, clear, unmistakable finger marks. My blood froze. Clara, she noticed my gaze. Immediately, she pulled the sleeve down, covering herself, her eyes filled with panic. It's nothing, Mom, she whispered. It's nothing, Mom, please. Victor noticed the exchange. Is something wrong? No, Clara replied quickly. Nothing, everything's fine. He narrowed his eyes, then he smiled. Evelyn, more wine? No, thank you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my daughter and run out of there. I wanted to call the police, a lawyer, anyone. But Clara looked at me with pleading eyes. Not now, please, not now. So I stayed quiet and I hated myself for it. The dinner continued. The main course arrived. Fish for Victor, chicken for Mr. Sterling, salad for Clara. Just salad? Mr. Sterling asked. Dieting again? I'm not very hungry, she replied. Women and their silly habits, he commented, shaking his head. Mrs. Patricia didn't say anything. She just cut her food into small pieces and ate mechanically like a robot. Victor talked to his father about a work project, a new building in the financial district, a major investment. It could be the project of my career, Victor was saying. I hope so, son. It's time you stopped being second and were first. I know, Dad, I'm working on it. Good. A man should be the best in everything, at work, at home, in life. That's right. Clara moved her fork over the salad without eating. I tried to breathe normally and then the dessert arrived. The server brought a tray with different options. Mr. Sterling ordered pecan pie. Victor ordered cheesecake. Mrs. Patricia said she didn't want anything. I ordered coffee. The server looked at Clara. And for you, ma'am, cheesecake too, please. The server nodded and walked away. A few minutes later, he returned with the tray. Pecan pie for Mr. Sterling, coffee for me, and 2 plates of cheesecake. Except that one wasn't cheesecake, it was pecan pie. The server placed it in front of Clara. Excuse me, she said softly, I ordered cheesecake. Oh, I'm so sorry, let me change it for you. No, it doesn't matter, she said quickly. I can eat the pecan pie, no problem. Mom, it's no trouble, seriously, it's fine. But Victor had already raised his hand. Excuse me. The server approached nervously. Yes, sir, is this how you work here? Do you bring whatever you feel like? I'm very sorry, sir, it was a mistake. Can I change it? My wife ordered cheesecake. Victor, it doesn't matter. Clara whispered. Really? I can eat the pecan pie. He turned to her. It doesn't matter. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath, something dark. Honey, it's just dessert. Are you always going to be such a conformist? I'm not being conformist. You always embarrass me. His voice rose. Nearby tables began to look over. Victor, please, people are watching. I don't care what people think. And then it happened. In a swift, brutal, unexpected movement, Victor reached out and grabbed Clara by the hair. He yanked her head back hard. The entire restaurant fell silent. A silence so dense, so absolute that I could hear my own heart beating. Clara did not scream, she did not defend herself. She only let out a muffled sob, a sound that came from the deepest part of her soul as tears began to roll down her cheeks. Her hands clung to the table, trembling. Her neck was twisted at an unnatural angle and no one moved. The server froze, the diners looked, but no one intervened. Mrs. Patricia looked down at her plate as if nothing was happening. And in that terrifying silence, in that moment frozen in time, a voice rang out loud, clear, clapping. "Mr. Sterling, that's how it's done, son," he shouted, hitting the table with an open palm. "That's how it's done. She needs to know her place. A woman who doesn't respect her husband needs to be taught." "Well done." Victor let go of Clara's hair. She slumped back in her chair, her shoulders shaking, her hands covering her face. She was crying silently, like someone who has learned that her tears don't matter. And I felt something inside me break, something that had been holding me together, keeping me calm, controlled, polite, something that shattered into 1,000 pieces. My hands trembled on the table. My blood turned to ice and fire at the same time. I felt my mother's handkerchief in my purse. I felt George's presence beside me. I felt all the women in my family, all those who kept quiet, all those who endured, all those who didn't have a voice. And I stood up, and in that moment the whole world seemed to stop. All eyes turned to me. The diners, the servers, the restaurant manager watching from the entrance. Victor looked at me with cold surprise, Mr. Sterling with undisguised contempt, Mrs. Patricia with a flicker of fear, and Clara. Clara looked at me with pure panic. "No, Mom, please don't." I could read her thoughts as if she were screaming them. But there was something stronger than my daughter's fear. There was a lifetime of silence, of my own mother's quiet endurance of every ignored sign that had been growing inside me. Years of believing it wasn't my place to intervene. But that night the silence ended. I extended my hand toward Clara. "Honey, stand up now." My voice came out firm, a steel rod in the tense silence. Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, no." "Evelyn," Victor intervened, his voice low and dangerous. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation. It was a moment of tension, nothing more. Clara knows that sometimes I get nervous. It's work stress. She understands." I looked at my daughter. She nodded weakly. She nodded her head like a broken puppet. "It's true, Mom. It was just a difficult moment. Victor has a lot of pressure at work. I understand." "You understand?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "You understand him pulling your hair in public? You understand him humiliating you in front of all these people?" "No, Clara, you do not understand. You have been taught to endure, and I refuse to let that tradition continue." Mr. Sterling wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up, puffing out his chest. "Evelyn, I think it's better if you calm down. You're making a scene. This is a family matter between husband and wife. We don't need your drama. A little discipline never hurt anyone. Look at my Patricia. 50 years of marriage and never a problem because she knows her place." I looked at Mrs. Patricia. She was still sitting motionless, a ghost in her own life. 50 years of silent captivity. And suddenly I understood the lineage of this cruelty. Generations of silenced women, of men who believed they had rights over them. "Mr. Sterling," I said slowly, my eyes locked on his, "with all due respect, you are not going to tell me how to raise my daughter or how to protect her. And yes, she does need protection from her own husband." I walked toward Clara. She tried to back away, but there was no more room. I gently took her arm. "Forgive me, honey." I pulled up the sleeve of her dress. There they were. The bruises in shades of yellow, green, and purple, some recent, others older. Clear finger marks on her wrist, pressure marks on her forearm. I held her arm up for all to see. "This," I said loudly so every person in that restaurant could hear me, "this is not work stress. This is not a moment of tension. This is not discipline. This is violence. This is abuse, and this will never be kept silent again." Clara tried to pull her arm free, sobbing. "Mom, please, you're embarrassing me." "I'm embarrassing you." I squeezed her hand. "The shame belongs to him, Clara. Not to you." Victor stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backward with a loud crash. "That's enough. We're leaving now." He started walking away, expecting his wife to follow. But this time she didn't. She stayed seated, looking at me, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes steadying. No, she whispered. Victor froze and turned around, his eyes burning with rage and confusion. What did you say? I said no. I'm not going anywhere with you. The sound of her voice, soft but firm, was like a shot in the silence. It was the first decision she had made for herself in years. Mr. Sterling moved towards her. Clara, you are going to regret this. Do you know what you are doing? Think about your son, Ethan. I am thinking about my son, Clara replied, her voice gaining strength. I'm choosing to show him what a mother who respects herself looks like. I'm choosing to live. I'm choosing to be free. I gently took Clara's hand, pulling her up. She stood tall. Victor, I stated, facing him completely. You cannot treat my daughter like this, not in front of me, not ever again. This marriage is over. I have the evidence of the abuse, and the police will be hearing about this starting tonight. Victor went utterly pale. The smug look was replaced by genuine fear. He looked at his father, who was just as stunned. Clara, come home. We'll talk about this later, he pleaded, his tone shifting from anger to a weak attempt at control. I'm not coming home, Victor. I'm going home. The one that protects me, the one that makes me feel safe, with my mother. The confrontation ended with Victor and his father leaving the restaurant, scrambling past the silent diners, their exit a blur of fury and shame. Mrs. Patricia finally stood, looked at Clara for a brief, heartbreaking moment, a look of recognition and sorrow, and then followed her husband, looking down at the floor as always. I looked at Clara. Her chin was trembling, but her eyes held a glorious, defiant spark I hadn't seen in years. The light of the girl who built a birdhouse to create a safe place. Let's go, honey, I said, my voice choked with pride. We walked out hand in hand. The restaurant manager rushed over, offering his full support, confirming he had witnessed the entire scene and would cooperate with any authorities. The server, the young man who had mistakenly brought the pecan pie, whispered to Clara as we passed, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I hope you are okay. Thank you for standing up." Clara nodded. I will be, she said. That night, my daughter and my grandson came back to my house. The silence in my kitchen was different from the silence in the restaurant. It was a silence of peace, of recovery, of a new beginning. We sat at the table, just us. I watched Clara hold her teacup, her hands no longer trembling, the shadows in her eyes beginning to recede. She was coming back to life. The legal battle that followed was grueling, designed to exhaust us, but we stood firm. Victor tried to fight for custody, to deny everything, to claim alienation. But the evidence, the photographs Clara had bravely taken and hidden, the testimony of the restaurant staff, and most importantly, Clara's unwavering voice was stronger. She finally spoke her truth in court without fear, reclaiming her own narrative. Victor was charged with domestic violence and was prohibited from approaching Clara and Ethan. Clara is now thriving. She returned to architecture, not just building structures, but designing safe spaces for women who need a new start. She found her voice again, strong, brilliant, and capable. She is no longer afraid. Now, a year later, she is living in her own apartment with Ethan. It's small, bright, filled with laughter, and smells like fresh paint and freedom. I visit her often. I watch my grandson laugh and play in the sun-drenched living room. Clara looks at me with tears in her eyes, tears of gratitude, not fear. If my story helps even one woman to open her eyes, to find the courage to leave, to understand that she deserves love without pain, then every tear, every moment of fear, every sleepless night will have been worth it. Because silence kills, but truth sets you free. And sometimes all we need is an outstretched hand, an open door, a voice that says, I believe you, you are not alone, you can leave. I was that voice for my daughter. This is the power of a mother's love and a daughter's courage. If this story resonated with you, and you believe in the power of shared wisdom and transformation, please subscribe to Grandma's Stories. Hit the like button and that little bell icon so you don't miss another true story of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, we share one life lesson, one story of resilience. Share this message with someone you love. Sometimes, just one story like this can change an entire day or an entire life. God bless you, and until next time.